This is a 48 volt nominal battery bank, but it can go up to 56, 57 volts. Shouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't. All right, let's check the output voltage and touch the barrel. 0.8 volts. Oh, good evening, everybody. So I've had Starlink running for the last several months, and other than that one major outage that I talked about at the end of my last Starlink video, I haven't really had any problems. I'll get into more of how everything's running in a later video. I'll probably end up doing like a 6-month review of how things are going. Well, one thing that I noticed, it's actually something that I had to deal with my previous cable provider, was anytime I'm doing tests around the house and I need to turn off a system to move it around, to reinstall a new system, my internet would go out because I would end up killing the power. Now you can get past that by getting a UPS and putting a UPS on your modem on your Starlink router, and that could take care of that. But I found that those stupid little UPS batteries, they never last. So I was trying to figure out, all right, well, what can I do? Because I don't want every time I shut a system down to do some tests for the whole house internet to go down. And actually, if you grab the AC power brick, input is 100 to 240 volts at 2.5 amps. Output is 57 volts at 3.42 amps. So that got me thinking, why couldn't I just connect it directly to my 48 volt bus bar? Let that power my Starlink. And so I ended up looking, and because your battery bank voltage goes up and down and it's not a consistent 57 volts, I didn't know how much tolerance there was on the Starlink router, but I found that they actually make a DC power supply that can handle 12 volts up to 58 volts, I believe. So I picked it up. So I want to look at what's it going to take to tie my Starlink directly into my 48 volt battery bank. So let's get started. So let's see what comes in the box. So we've got regulatory notice, and then the DC power block, which looks exactly the same as the AC power block. Slide this thing off. So we've got a barrel connector on one end with the waterproof gasket, and then an XT60 connector inside here. Model number UTP241L. Input 12 to 48 volts at 30 amps. Output 56 volts at 3.57 amps. So this does have an IP66 Type 4 rating as well. And then underneath, we have another XT60 connector, which, you know, if you've got a power station or something that has an XT60 connection on it, you can just plug this directly into that and have it supply power to your Starlink. But I'm going to take some 10 gauge wire that I have, slap some ring terminals on one side and an XT60 on the other, and see if we can use this power supply to power my Starlink setup. So I am not the best solderer. I think I can do enough to make this work. So we'll let that warm up, get our spool of wire and our XT60. Now with these, there's a positive and a negative stamped on the connector. I don't know if you can actually see that or not, if it's actually going to focus, maybe. But we'll have to trim our wire, and then it should actually slide into the connector a little bit. And this is a male XT60 connector. So we will start with our red positive line. I had this spool laying around. So let's trim a little bit off. And does it... Oh, that's like perfect. Perfect. So I want about that same on the negative side. Very nice. So let's make sure we've got our positive side on the left, and the positive side is going to be this flat side on the XT60 connector. Now, you don't actually have to go through and make your own cable. You can just purchase an XT60 to ring terminal cable off of Amazon. You can even find the barrel connector version. Lots of different options. So don't think that because I'm making my own cable that you have to as well. Not pretty at all, but we have our connector. So I'm going to give myself a little slack. Cut our lines. So this will slide up from the opposite end. And it snaps into place. And I'm going to end up putting ring terminals on either end to connect to the battery bank. And the positive side has to be a larger ring terminal because it'll go on this block here with a 30 amp, 58 volt rated fuse. And I went that big because it's 10 gauge wire and the rating on that power supply is up to 30 amps. Granted, that's going to be for 12 volts, but I had the wire, I had everything, so I just sized it for 30 amps so that I have proper fusing for my wire gauge. So our negative and our positive, and we will use our ratcheting crimpers. Oh, so nice. So easy. So much easier than trying to grab a pair of pliers and make this work. But there we go. There's our little pigtail. Now on this side, I mean, honestly, you could end up wiring it up for a cigarette adapter, a barrel plug, so that you could use it on a power station or even in your car. But what I'm going to need to use it for is directly off my 48 volt battery bank. So right now I have my Starlink setup sitting on my table right here. But here's my 48 volt bus bar. So we will add that fuse block right down here on the positive, and then we'll use one of these smaller screws for our negative. And then really it should just be plugging this sucker in. So we will put our positive down here. And I had never used these style terminal blocks before. I actually want to thank Average Joe for pointing me in the right direction, because I was trying to figure out what exactly I could use to fuse this connection. Then we will grab one of these screws right here. And these fuses just come right off. Pretty slick. And then washer, lock washer, and nut. And put our cap back on. So there's our connection right there, XT60, directly into my bus bar system with a fused connection. And we'll check our voltage ever so carefully. 52.9 volts. So now that we've got our little pigtail connector made up going to the bus bar, and we've checked the voltage, the only thing left to do is connect it to the power supply and see if it works, right? Now, one thing that I did notice, and I'm sure some of you will notice too, is the power supply said that it's rated up to 48 volts. This is a 48 volt nominal battery bank, but it can go up to 56, 57 volts. Shouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't, but we'll find out. We'll actually test it on the power supply first before we hook it to this Starlink router. But I'm just going to grab my cable that came with the power supply, and we will plug one end into the XT60 that come off the battery bank, and the other end, make sure we have it oriented right into the power supply. It didn't blow up. That's good. I don't hear anything. All right, let's check the output voltage and touch the barrel. 0.8 volts. So here's the back of the Starlink router. So we've got our antenna connection. Everybody corrected me. It's not a dish, it's an antenna. Our network connection, and then our power connection. I'm going to pull the AC power connection. And we can see on the app that we lost connection. And then we will grab our new DC connection and plug it in. I've got no light. Doesn't seem like it's working at all. So let's check our voltage on this. Positive, negative, 52.9 volts. Plug it in. And we got nothing. Well, bummer. So it can't go straight off of a 48 volt nominal battery bank. Huh. All right. Well, that kind of kiboshes that idea, doesn't it? And here I was hoping that I could go straight from the battery bank. But yeah, it's not powering on at all. I got no lights, no nothing. And we'll go back to, yeah, 0.6 volts. So it's not outputting anything. All right, well, let's try a 12 volt then. All right, here is an old, it's actually one of my first solar batteries that I put together. 12 volts. I don't even remember what kind of, oh, it's the Xiaoxiang BMS. Forgot about that. 13.17 volts. Okay. So, and again, this is part of the reason why I ended up using the 10 gauge wire and getting the 30 amp fuse. So let's wire it up over here. Let's just pinch that in there first. Check our voltage. 13.17 volts. So now let's check our DC power supply. And now I am getting 55.3 volts. So now I want to know, well, how much over 48 volts makes it stop working? So I grab my desktop power supply Let's turn this thing on. So it's at 59 volts right now. We want it to go down to 48 volts. 47.46 is fine. So I'm going to turn that off, and then we will clamp onto the positive, clamp onto the negative, and connect our power supply. So then we should have our voltage coming out right here on the barrel connection at 55-ish volts. So we'll turn our power supply on. We're pulling very little amperage right now. When I touch this, we're at 55.3 volts on output from the Starlink DC power supply. So works fine. Stay right there. Okay, it stays. Can you see, hopefully? All right. So I want to slowly take the voltage up and see when this stops. Hopefully my hand stays out of the way. All right, we're at 48 volts on the power supply. We're still outputting 55.3 volts. 49, still outputting. 50 volts, still outputting. 51, still good. 52.57, fine. 54 volts, and we're still outputting. So why isn't it working on my battery bank? 55 volts. 56.9. We're up to 56 volts on here. But I mean, really, that should be almost as high as my battery bank's going to go. So then why didn't it work over there? Did I not have a good connection or something? I know I had a good connection. I had proper voltage and everything. 57.5. We're at 57 volts on the output. So we're still fine. Anything that gets above, what is it, the 56 volts that the power supply does, it just basically passes the voltage through, it seems. So it should work. But why doesn't it? Well, let me try and reconnect over there again and see if we can get it to work. All right, everything is reconnected over there. I want to take my multimeter, check the voltage. Again, 52.9 volts DC. So then I just need to plug this in to here. Now we're getting 55.3 volts. Makes 0 sense whatsoever. I used all the same cables, all the same connections. All right, I'm gonna try it again. 55.3 volts. Okay. So now plug it into the back of the dish. Now I got the light coming on. Enough to drive you crazy. What in the world? Didn't work before, works fine now. But I'm glad that I did grab the power supply and we adjusted that voltage so that we could see what it does as it passes that 48 volt range. It still seems to level out at 55-ish volts, and 55 point, what does the back say? Oh, this says 56 volts. So once it gets above 56 volts, then it ends up basically just passing the voltage through. So now I can come back to the app, select the Starlink. It's still trying to connect, it seems. Entering Starlink network. Optimizing connection. And we're booting up. Well, needless to say, that did not go how I thought it was going to go. I expected this to make a few connections, plug it all in, and it worked fine. And ultimately, that's what ended up happening. Now we're back online. If I do a Wi-Fi speed test, poopy. But if I do a hardwired speed test, turn off the Wi-Fi, reload the page. 311 down, and 25 up. And I know a lot of folks said in my last video that I should have done a hardwired connection for my speed test instead of a Wi-Fi connection. I completely agree, and I'll get into that in a later video as I do my probably a 6-month review. But everything's back up and running. Everything's working great. I still don't know why the initial connections didn't work. But again, I'm glad that we were able to see what it does with those different voltages. We did show on a 12-volt battery that you can power the dish, as well as up to 57-ish volts to power your Starlink setup. I don't know if it's helpful for you guys or not. I know for me, being able to hardwire directly into a 48-volt power supply that I already have here that's always going to be turned on, it just makes sense instead of having to convert from 120 volts down to 56, 57 volts anyways. But I guess it does show that if you want to take Starlink someplace else, you can use a portable power station, you can use a battery, anything 12 to 55, 56 volts with the DC power supply. So I'll leave a link to down in the description below if you're interested in something like that. If you have done a direct connection to your Starlink where you're not even using a DC converter off of a 48-volt battery bank, I'd be very interested to know if you've done it, what your experience is so far. If you are interested in using Starlink for your home, for on the go, if we look over here at Starlink's website right now, no residential hardware costs for select areas. I had to pay $400 for my hardware. Looks like some areas there's no cost right now. They do have some areas $80 a service, and then even the roaming, you've got $50 for your service. So jump on over to that website. I'll leave a link down in the description for that. Full disclosure, if you sign up using my Starlink link, then you'll get a free month of service, and I'll get a free month of service. So if you do, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And hopefully you enjoy your free month of service. So fun little, I don't know, experiment, change, tweak, fix. Just something to be able to improve how I have to use things here around the house. So I'm not constantly losing power or swapping out UPS batteries for my internet hardware. So with that, I'm going to let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay warm, and we'll catch up with you later.